It always begins the same way, with warmth that feels like sunlight after a long winter, with a voice that tells you all the right things, with a connection so magnetic it feels destined, like something ancient has finally returned home. But here's what you don't see at first. It isn't destiny. It's recognition, not of them, but of something inside you. Carl Jung said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." That's what's happening here. You're not unlucky in love. You're unconscious in love. You mistake familiarity for safety. You confuse recognition with resonance. Because deep down, this person, this manipulator, mirrors the parts of you you've never dared to face. The fear of being unworthy. The hunger to be chosen. The ache to be seen without having to earn it. And when someone steps into your life and unconsciously mirrors those hidden parts, your shadow parts, it feels magnetic. Because your psyche is trying to heal itself through them. That's the trap. That's the mirror. You think it's love, but it's your subconscious saying, "Look here. This is the wound you still haven't healed. It's not about how charming they are. It's about what they awaken in you. The ache you buried. The story you keep replaying. The hope that this time, if you love harder, give more, stay longer, you'll finally rewrite the ending. But you can't rewrite the past by handing your pen to someone else. Every manipulator who's entered your life has been a reflection of the self you've abandoned, the one who still believes love must be earned, that peace must be paid for, that being seen means being used. And I know that hurts to hear, because it's easier to blame the liar than to face the lie you've been living. But the truth is, they're not the first to manipulate you. You were the first. You manipulated yourself into believing that love meant sacrifice, that boundaries meant rejection, that silence meant peace. You dimmed your own light long before anyone else tried to. So when someone comes along and matches that energy, when they take without asking, when they charm without meaning, it doesn't feel foreign. It feels familiar. And familiarity feels safe, even when it's killing you. That's the mirror you keep missing. That's why you keep falling. You don't fall for manipulators because you're foolish. You fall because your unhealed self keeps searching for home, even if that home burned you down. So pause. Look deeper. That person who keeps taking from you, they're just the surface. The real question isn't, why are they like this? It's, what in me keeps calling them in? And when you find that answer, when you dare to face the reflection you've been running from, the cycle begins to break. Not because they change, but because you finally see the mirror for what it is, an invitation to meet yourself. Carl Jung said, "Everyone carries a shadow, and the less it is embodied in the individual's conscious life, the blacker and denser it is." That's the part of the story no one wants to face, the part where the villain isn't just out there in the people who hurt you, but in here, quietly shaping the choices you keep making. You see, the shadow isn't evil. It's unseen. It's not your darkness. It's your disowned light. It's every truth you buried to survive. Every emotion you labeled too much. Every piece of you someone once told you was unlovable. And so you learned to hide it, lock it away, pretend it didn't exist. You became nice. You became easygoing. You became the one who always understands. And slowly, the fire inside you, the instinct that warned you when something felt wrong, went quiet. That silence is how manipulation begins. Because when you exile parts of yourself, you also X your protection. You forget how to say no. You forget how to walk away. You forget that love doesn't have to be earned through endurance. So the shadow takes over from the dark, and it whispers through your choices. Maybe if I give more, they'll see me. Maybe if I'm patient, they'll change. Maybe if I become everything they want, they'll finally stay. But that voice isn't your intuition. It's your wound. It's the part of you that still believes you must trade authenticity for belonging. Manipulative people sense that. They're drawn to the light you refuse to claim. They smell the guilt of your self-abandonment and step into it like a home. Because the parts you deny, your anger, your assertiveness, your power, those are the very things that would protect you. Your shadow isn't the problem. Ignoring it is. Every time you deny your darkness, it finds another way to express itself, through who you choose, what you tolerate, what you chase. You repress your rage, and it returns as exhaustion. You suppress your loneliness, and it returns as dependency. You bury your pain, and it returns as attachment to those who trigger it. Jung said the shadow is the thing a person has no wish to be. But what if that thing, the part of you that's bold, that's angry, that's selfish enough to say no more, is exactly who you need to become to be free? You've spent years trying to be pure light, forgiving too soon, loving too much, swallowing every word that might cause discomfort. But light without shadow is blindness, and love without boundaries is self-destruction. So it's time to meet the side of you you've been afraid of, the one who doesn't flinch when someone lies, the one who doesn't chase closure, doesn't beg to be chosen, doesn't confuse manipulation for intimacy. That's your shadow. That's your missing power. Integrating it doesn't mean becoming cruel. It means becoming whole. It means saying, I can be kind, and I can also say no. I can be loving, and I can also protect myself. I can forgive, but I will never forget what I've learned. You can't escape manipulation until you stop manipulating yourself into being smaller, quieter, more acceptable. Until you let the parts you've buried finally breathe. Your shadow isn't your enemy. It's your compass. It's the part of you that knows what you deserve, even when you pretend you don't. Carl Jung once said, knowing your own darkness is the best method for dealing with the darkness of other people. Let that sink in, because this is where the illusion ends. You've been told your power lies in kindness, in compassion, in being the one who always understands, forgives, endures. But that isn't power. That's performance. That's survival disguised as virtue. Real power doesn't whisper, it's okay, when it's not. Real power doesn't smile through betrayal. Real power doesn't shrink itself to keep the peace. Real power knows. It knows when something is off, and it doesn't rationalize it. It knows when someone is lying, and it doesn't pretend not to hear. It knows its worth, and it doesn't hand it out like charity. Manipulative people thrive in the absence of that kind of knowing. They feed on doubt, your doubt, because self-doubt is open access. It's a door without a lock. It's an unguarded kingdom waiting for someone else to rule it. You think they took your power, but they didn't. You gave it away, piece by piece, every time you silenced your intuition to keep them comfortable. That's the hardest truth to face. You can't be manipulated without your consent. Not your spoken consent, your energetic one. The quiet surrender that happens when you stop trusting yourself. You felt it, didn't you? That moment when the tone shifted, when something inside whispered, "This doesn't feel right." And you ignored it, because you didn't want to seem paranoid, because you wanted to believe in the good, because you'd rather betray yourself than believe someone else could. That's how power leaks, not in explosions, but in sighs. In every small "it's fine" that wasn't fine. In every apology you gave for simply existing. In every second chance you offered to someone who hadn't even earned the first. And here's the truth Jung was pointing toward. The darkness outside you will always match the darkness you refuse to face inside you. If you fear confrontation, you'll attract those who exploit your silence. If you suppress your anger, you'll attract those who provoke it. If you doubt your worth, you'll attract those who confirm it. You can't out-love manipulation, you can't out-give it, you can only outgrow it. And that happens when you reclaim the one thing you've been trained to distrust, your inner authority. That quiet, steady voice that doesn't explain itself, that doesn't argue to be believed, that doesn't need proof to know what it knows. That's your power. It's not loud. It doesn't shout or threaten. It just stands there, rooted in self-respect, and says, "No. Not this time." Because once you trust that voice again, manipulators lose their grip. They can't twist what you've already named. They can't guilt what you've already accepted. They can't control someone who's made peace with both their light and their darkness. See, power isn't about dominance. It's about presence. It's about being so anchored in your truth that no one's confusion can shake it. It's about remembering that empathy doesn't mean surrender, that love doesn't require blindness. You've spent so long trying to be the bigger person, when what you really needed to be was the whole person. Whole people don't need to prove their goodness. They don't need to beg to be understood. They don't need to hand their power over to those who feed on uncertainty. They stand in their truth, unshaken, unedited, unapologetic. And that's when everything shifts. Because when you embody your own darkness, you stop being afraid of anyone else's. When you own your anger, you stop falling for those who provoke it. When you reclaim your boundaries, you stop mistaking manipulation for love. That's the truth about power. It was never theirs. It was always yours. They just convinced you to forget that. And now, you remember. Carl Jung said, "There is no coming to consciousness without pain." And that's the part no one wants to hear. We want growth to feel gentle. We want awakening to feel like peace. But the truth? Real awakening feels like destruction. Because before something inside you can rise, something else has to die. The illusions, the patterns, the version of you that tolerated too much and called it love. When you start to wake up, really wake up, you begin to see the architecture of your own suffering. How the manipulator was never the main story, just a mirror. How every heartbreak was a conversation between you and your shadow. How the same kind of person kept showing up not because the universe hates you, but because your soul was trying to finish a lesson you refused to face. That's the alchemy of pain, turning what once broke you into the material that rebuilds you. But first, you have to stop running from it. You can't alchemize what you won't feel. You can't transmute what you keep humming. You can't heal what you keep blaming. So sit with the pain. Not as a victim, as a student. Ask it what it's teaching you. Ask it why it keeps returning in different faces, different names, different forms of the same damn story. Because there's always a pattern. And beneath the pattern, there's a purpose. Every time you ignored your intuition, you taught the universe you didn't trust yourself. Every time you silenced your boundaries, you told life you were willing to be edited. Every time you forgave too soon, you reinforced the lie that love means self-abandonment. Awake pain shows you this. It doesn't comfort. It clarifies. It burns away your illusions until all that's left is truth. And truth, at first, hurts like hell, because it dismantles the fantasy you built to survive, the fantasy that love could save you from yourself. But what if pain isn't punishment? What if pain is purification? What if it's the soul's way of breaking open the shell of your denial, so your real self can finally breathe? This is alchemy. To feel the fire, and instead of fleeing, to stay. To let it melt the false identities you've worn to be loved. To let it dissolve the ego that says, I need them to choose me. To let it refine your heart into something indestructible. Jung called it individuation, the process of becoming whole, of integrating every lost part of yourself until there is no longer a good you and a bad you, only the real you. That's what pain is doing. It's pulling you toward your wholeness, kicking, screaming, sobbing, but forward nonetheless. Because once you've sat in the fire and lived through it, you stop fearing it. You stop fearing loss, rejection, endings, because you've seen what remains when everything else burns. And what remains is you. Not the wounded version, not the desperate one, not the performer who needed to be chosen, but the one who finally understands that love doesn't arrive through rescue, it arrives through recognition. Carl Jung said, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." And that's what this part of your journey is about, the becoming. Not the pretending, not the performing, not the constant rebuilding after another collapse, but the becoming. You've spent so long surviving the fire that you forgot what it feels like to rise from it. To rise not with the same desperation for love, but with a deep, unshakable knowing of who you are without it. Because this is what rebirth really means. It's not about becoming someone new. It's about remembering who you were before the world convinced you to forget. The one who didn't chase love because they were love. The one who didn't need approval because they trusted their own truth. The one who didn't confuse attention with affection. Rebirth is remembering that version of you, and then protecting it like sacred ground. You see, manipulators don't vanish from your path just because you've been hurt enough. They vanish when you finally stop needing their validation to feel alive. When you stop mistaking intensity for intimacy. When you stop interpreting manipulation as meaning. Because the moment you return to yourself, they lose their access. They can't feed on what you no longer abandon. You stop chasing closure. You stop explaining your worth to those committed to misunderstanding it. You stop mistaking your empathy for obligation. And that's when rebirth begins. It doesn't arrive as a single cinematic moment. It comes quietly, in fragments. It's in the first no you say without apologizing. It's in the silence you allow, without filling it with explanations. It's in the moment you realize you can miss someone and still choose yourself anyway. Rebirth isn't about forgetting the pain. It's about refining it. It's about carrying your scars like scripture, reminders of what you've survived and proof of what you'll never tolerate again. Jung called this process individuation, the merging of every fragmented part of you into wholeness, the marriage between your light and your shadow, the death of the false self, the birth of the real one. And make no mistake, this kind of rebirth is violent. It demands that you mourn the person you were when you tolerated less. It asks you to let go of your coping mechanisms, the good person, the fixer, the forgiver. Because those roles once kept you safe, but now they keep you small. The new you doesn't beg for love. The new you doesn't chase ghosts. The new you doesn't need to prove anything to anyone who cannot see your light. The new you walks differently, not out of pride, but out of peace. Not out of armor, but out of awareness. That's the power of rebirth. It's not loud. It's not performative. It's steady. It's sovereign. You realize you don't need to become harder to survive. You just need to become truer. Because the truth, once accepted, become unshakable. And when you live in that truth, manipulators can't even breathe the same air. They sense it instantly. The self-ownership, the inner stillness, the quiet no, pulsing through your energy. And they retreat. Because your healed energy has nothing left for them to feed on. Rebirth is the point where you no longer define yourself by what broke you, where you stop saying, "They did this to me," and start saying, "I learned this through them." It's where you begin to bless the lesson without reopening the wound, where you finally see that the pain didn't destroy you. It delivered you. Carl Jung wrote, "One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious." And that's the moment you're in now, the moment when the light and the shadow finally face each other. When you stop running from the pain, stop hiding from your reflection, and finally, stand in the truth of who you are. This is the confrontation, the reckoning, the awakening that burns before it frees. Because here's the paradox. You spent your life trying to be light, good, kind, loving, forgiving, and yet that's exactly what drew the darkness toward you. Why? Because unintegrated light attracts shadow. Unclaimed power invites predators. And when you reject your own darkness, when you deny your anger, your instincts, your limits, you create a void inside you that someone else will always try to fill. You can't protect what you refuse to own. You can't master what you refuse to meet. That's why the manipulators came, not to punish you, but to mirror you, to force you to see the split inside your own soul, the split between who you are and who you've been pretending to be. You thought healing meant staying soft. It doesn't. Healing means becoming whole. You thought awakening meant light and love. It doesn't. It means fire and truth. You thought power meant never breaking. But power, real power, means breaking open again and again, and still choosing to rise with integrity. Because now you understand. Your light is not pure because it's untouched by darkness. It's pure because it includes it. That's what Jung meant by making the darkness conscious. To bring every hidden part of you into the light so it no longer controls you from the shadows. Your rage has wisdom. Your jealousy has messages. Your fear has boundaries. Your grief has depth. None of these make you weak. They make you real. And when you become real, truly real, manipulators disappear. They cannot operate in truth. They suffocate in authenticity, because manipulation depends on illusion, and illusion dies in the presence of someone who has met their own darkness and survived it. So this is the climax, the moment of merging, the holy union between your light and your shadow. You stand in front of your reflection, every wound, every scar, every failure, and instead of turning away, you say, "I see you. I forgive you. You're mine." Now you remember. Now the same heart that once tolerated deception beats with discernment. The same soul that once begged to be chosen chooses itself without hesitation. This is not revenge. This is resurrection. It's the kind of awakening that changes your frequency. You stop trying to fix, to prove, to please. You stop being available for emotional vampires. You stop being seduced by intensity, disguised as love. Because once you've met both your light and your shadow, you don't need anyone else to complete you. You are completion.